The vibration of the phone against the polished mahogany table was a silent scream, drowning out the smooth jazz piped into the Sterling Mansion's ballroom. Evelyn Mercer, dressed in the single most expensive dress she had ever purchased, a heavy, unforgiving velvet, knew exactly which call this was. It wasn't Ethan, her son. It was Wallace Sterling, Ethan's future father-in-law, and the sound alone carried the metallic tang of an ultimatum. She had two choices: answer and face the inevitable humiliation, or ignore it, and guarantee the collapse of the only shot at happiness Ethan believed he had found. She answered. Wallace Sterling's voice, a gravelly rumble of inherited authority, didn't bother with preamble. Evelyn, the caterers made a mess of the staff washrooms, unacceptable for tonight's guest list. I just told Ethan that before he is permitted to stand next to my daughter, he needs to demonstrate a basic understanding of real work. He needs to clean them, floor to ceiling. If he is not presentable and ready by the time the first guests arrive, in 3 hours. Evelyn, then the engagement is off. Permanently. And let's be clear, this is a test for both of you. Will you intervene and prove my assessment of his overindulgence correct, or will you let him learn his place? The line went dead, leaving a sickening echo in the vast, chandelier-lit silence. Evelyn's hands, which only moments before were smoothing the thick texture of her formal gown, began to shake, the silk lining feeling like rough twine against her skin. This was the final vicious cruelty in a 6-month campaign of testing. Ethan, who had successfully launched his own small tech firm with minimal seed money, was being treated like an applicant for janitorial services, merely because he hadn't been born into a trust fund. Evelyn's gut twisted, a familiar sensation born of decades of biting her tongue and minimizing her own struggles. Her fatal flaw, the unrelenting need for disproportionate self-sacrifice, was screaming at her to rush to Ethan, to take the sponge herself, to shield him from the toxic pride of the Sterling family. But she knew that any intervention now would merely confirm Sterling's belief that Ethan was a weakling, protected by his struggling single mother. The ballroom was beginning to fill with the soft scent of imported lilies and the heady aroma of aged scotch. But all Evelyn could smell was the sharp, acrid scent of industrial cleaner that must now be clinging to her son's clothes in the basement service corridor. She knew Ethan was already down there, scrubbing grout with forced diligence, desperately trying to earn a place that Sterling had no intention of freely giving. Evelyn pressed her eyes shut, visualizing the path. The main hall was to her left, leading to the early guests. The service elevator and a confrontation was to her right. The next 3 hours would decide not just Ethan's marriage, but the fate of Evelyn's hard-won peace. There are moments in life where the path of dignity is utterly blocked by the need for survival. If you were Evelyn, standing on the edge of that velvet carpet, would you risk everything right now, or would you wait until the last minute? Keep that question in mind as we watch her move. Evelyn turned sharply, choosing the back corridor, the invisible artery used by staff, over the grand staircase. The heavy velvet of her gown, bought specifically to project an image of effortless wealth she didn't possess, felt like a lead blanket, hindering her rapid, shallow breaths. She needed to see him, to assess the damage, but she couldn't risk being seen by the arriving guests, cementing the notion of a hysterical mother interfering. The marble floor of the receiving area gave way to cold, unyielding gray concrete, and the soft jazz was replaced by the low, continuous drone of the industrial air conditioning units. She found the door marked "Personnel Only," her fingers tracing the rough texture of the chipped metal handle. The air that wafted out was aggressively clean, saturated with the pungent, sweet scent of industrial bleach that burned the back of her throat. She cracked the door just enough to peer into the brightly lit maintenance hallway. There he was. Ethan, her handsome, intelligent son, stripped down to his undershirt, his tie discarded on a slop sink, scrubbing a floor tile with the fierce, focused determination of a man whose future depended on the perfect eradication of mold. The frantic, wet, scrubs of the nylon brush against the ceramic tiles was the most heartbreaking sound she had ever heard. His jaw was clenched tight enough to splinter teeth, and sweat darkened the fine hairs at the nape of his neck. He wasn't just cleaning, he was trying to prove he was worthy, submitting to the indignity because his fatal flaw, a desperation for acceptance, mirrored her own need for peace. She felt the immediate hot prickle of tears behind her eyes, the reflexive urge to rush in and declare this farce over. But Sterling's voice, cold and precise, echoed in her memory. Will you intervene and prove my assessment of his overindulgence correct? It's strange, isn't it? The sheer weight of expectation can force us into actions that betray everything we believe. If you could give Ethan advice right now, what would it be? Clean faster or walk away? Evelyn retreated, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against the silk lining of her dress. Direct intervention was suicide, but perhaps Sterling could be reasoned with. She had always prided herself on being the diplomat, the negotiator who could smooth rough edges, the ultimate act of disproportionate self-sacrifice, always putting her needs last to facilitate comfort for others. She would find Sterling, appeal to his sense of propriety, not as a mother, but as a business colleague, and try to buy Ethan time. She checked her small, antique watch. 2 hours and 45 minutes left. She had to move fast. She slipped around the corner, intending to take the elevator back up, but collided instead with a young woman in an immaculate black uniform, holding a tray piled high with empty, delicate champagne flutes. The glasses shifted, chiming a frantic, panicked melody. Evelyn caught the tray just before it tipped, the rough, damp surface uprouse of the cleaning towel beneath the glasses rubbing against her bare skin. "Excuse me, my profound apologies," Evelyn whispered, steadying the tray, her voice shaking slightly. The staff member, whose face was rigid with fear, barely met her gaze. "It's quite all right, madam. Just try to stay clear of the service entrances, please. Mr. Sterling prefers minimal disruption tonight." The cold, subtle dismissal, a simple request for the help to stay out of the help's way, cracked Evelyn's facade. She was dressed like them, but treated like the help, because she lacked the Sterling name. The incident fueled not anger, but a cold, calculated resolve. She would not risk Ethan, but she would certainly risk herself to save him from this slow erosion of dignity. She adjusted her gown, smoothing the velvet, and began the calculated ascent back into the lion's den. The main ballroom was a glittering tapestry of wealth and indifference. Evelyn located Wallace Sterling by the sheer magnetic force of his self-importance, holding court near the massive fireplace, the flickering light casting dramatic shadows across his sharp, calculating face. He wore his power like a tailored suit, expensive and imposing. Approaching him felt like stepping onto thin ice over an abyssal drop. "Wallace," she began, her voice carefully modulated to sound professional, not pleading. Her hands, balled into fists inside the deep pockets of her gown, were the only testament to her internal tremor. The air around them was thick with the warm, vanilla scent of expensive perfume, and the low, contented murmurs of the elite. Sterling turned slowly, one eyebrow raised in a perfect arc of condescension. "Evelyn, I thought you would be busy supervising the cleaning crew. Surely you're not trying to interfere with a crucial lesson in humility for your boy." "I am not interfering. I am observing the terms of your agreement," Evelyn countered, trying to keep her gaze steady. "Ethan is fulfilling the task. However, I must question the proportionality of the punishment. A mess made by professional caterers, rectified by a future member of your family, hours before a major event. It seems more a display of power than a measure of competence." Sterling chuckled, a dry, brittle sound that offered no humor. He took a sip of champagne, the tiny bubbles hissing softly near his mouth. "Proportionality. Evelyn, your son is marrying into a lineage that built this country. He needs to understand that we don't tolerate sloppiness. If he can't handle a little industrial mess, how will he handle the complexities of the merger I'm offering him next week? This is not about cleaning, it's about attitude. About obedience. Obedience over dignity. That is the core conflict of the powerful, isn't it? They rarely want compliance, they want complete submission. If you've ever had to sacrifice your pride for a job or a loved one, you know the razor's edge Evelyn is walking right now." The clock was ticking. Only 2 hours and 30 minutes remained. Evelyn's disproportionate self-sacrifice flared. She needed to buy time, to smooth this over, even if it meant absorbing the insult herself. "I understand the need for excellence, Wallace, but perhaps a symbolic act of contrition would suffice. He is already exhausted. I propose he finishes one bathroom completely and then dedicates the remaining time to ensuring his presentation is impeccable for your guests. Surely that demonstrates his commitment." Sterling's eyes narrowed, searching her face for weakness. He could hear the low, throbbing beat of the orchestra starting up nearby, a deep rhythmic sound that pulsed through the floorboards, signaling the arrival of the main party. He almost accepted. Then a sadistic glint entered his eyes. "No, he cleans them all," Sterling said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And let me assure you, if he is a minute late, or if I find one streak on the porcelain, the engagement is terminated. And Evelyn, since you are so keen on managing things, why don't you make yourself useful? Go down and personally inspect his work. Make sure it meets my standards. If it doesn't, you will tell him he failed." He walked away, leaving her standing alone, the bitter aftertaste of defeat coating her tongue. She was now the messenger of his cruelty, the implement of her son's potential downfall. Evelyn descended once more into the concrete labyrinth, but this time, the purpose was clear. She was no longer an observer, but an unwilling accomplice. 2 hours and 15 minutes remained. The atmosphere in the service corridor had grown heavier, the scent of concentrated bleach now mingling sickly with the faint odor of tired sweat. The flickering fluorescent lights hummed with a monotonous, draining intensity. She found Ethan collapsed on a plastic crate outside the second bathroom, wiping his brow with the back of a hand smeared with gray grime. He jumped up when he saw her, trying to look composed, but the slump of his shoulders was unmistakable. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice rough. He quickly grabbed a rag, pretending to polish a chrome fixture that was already gleaming. "Wallace sent me to inspect the work," she said, her voice flat, the lie tasting like ash. She didn't mention the ultimatum, that she had to be the one to deliver the bad news if he failed. She couldn't, not yet. Her disproportionate self-sacrifice demanded she protect his spirit, even if she couldn't protect his time. "It's impeccable, Mom. See?" Ethan gestured toward the service bathroom. The white porcelain fixtures shone under the harsh light. The grout lines, which she knew had been black with filth, were now a pristine, blinding white. He was working with surgical precision, fueled by fear and love for his fiancée. Evelyn stepped inside. She ran a finger along the top of a recessed window ledge. Clean. She examined the chrome on the faucet. No spots. The air in the small room was damp and chilled, a stark contrast to the heated ballroom. The texture of the industrial soap dispenser felt rough and greasy under her touch, a residue of the staff's constant, hurried cleaning cycle, which Ethan was trying to erase entirely. "It is excellent, Ethan. Truly," she conceded, looking past the polished tile to her son's bloodshot eyes. "But there are still 2 more, and you need time to shower and dress. You have less than 2 hours." He sagged against the doorframe, the energy draining out of him in a visible rush. "I can't, Mom. I physically can't move this fast. It's too much. I think Sterling wants me to fail." The words were an admission of defeat, a raw sound of frustration that scraped against Evelyn's soul. The moment a strong person admits they've been beaten is profoundly dangerous. It means the enemy's psychological attack has succeeded. But what happens if you absorb that admission of failure? Does it make you stronger, or does it just confirm the sacrifice? Evelyn swallowed hard. This was the moment of decision. She saw the true cost of Sterling's test, the chipping away of Ethan's self-worth. She couldn't let him break. "You take a break? 5 minutes. Drink some water. I'll make a start on the next one. Just for a minute, until you catch your breath." She reached for the nylon scrub brush, the coarse plastic handle digging into her palm, ignoring Ethan's immediate protest. "No, Mom, don't. If Sterling sees you, it's over." "He won't see me," Evelyn insisted, kneeling on the cold, hard floor. Her expensive velvet dress, already feeling ridiculous in this setting, caught on the wet floor, soaking up the industrial runoff. She began to scrub, the familiar rhythmic swish-on of the water and brush providing a momentary perverse comfort. For a brief second, she wasn't a society figure on probation. She was just a mother, cleaning up a mess. This was obstacle 1, the practical challenge, solved by sacrificing her dignity to buy time. But the deeper crisis was only beginning. Evelyn worked with desperate speed, the caustic fumes of the cleaning agent stinging her nostrils and making her eyes water, blurring the already stark reality. She attacked the grime near the baseboards, an area Ethan, focusing on the highly visible porcelain, had missed. She was sacrificing her costly gown, her composure, and technically her son's engagement, all for an extra 10 minutes of rest. Her body screamed in protest, unused to the sudden strain, yet her mind focused only on the ticking clock. 1 hour and 50 minutes remaining. Ethan, initially frozen by shame and surprise, eventually knelt beside her. "I can do this, Mom. Please, get up. You'll ruin everything." "You need to catch your breath, Ethan. You need to focus on what comes next, the presentation. Sterling is looking for flaws, and he will find them in your eyes if you walk out of here defeated," Evelyn hissed, not stopping her frantic scrubbing. The rough, worn handle of the brush had already raised a blister on her thumb, a searing pain she welcomed as a distraction. They worked in silence for another 5 minutes, a shared, desperate labor fueled by familial love and Sterling's calculated cruelty. Just as Evelyn felt the inevitable wave of exhaustion hit her, Ethan took the brush from her hand, his expression now resolute. "I'm ready," he said, standing up, his muscles trembling slightly from the exertion. "I'll finish this one and the last one. But thank you, Mom. You gave me the space I needed." Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone struggling isn't solving their problem, but simply standing beside them in the mess. Do you agree that moral support, even if risky, can be more effective than practical help? Evelyn retreated, her silk-lined gown now heavy with moisture and smelling distinctly of chlorine and humiliation. She ascended to the first floor, seeking a discreet powder room to compose herself. She needed a plan beyond cleaning. She needed leverage. The very air in the main house, scented with the luxurious woody notes of sandalwood from the essential oil diffusers, felt like a deliberate insult compared to the basement's sterile stench. As she touched up her makeup, Evelyn's mind whirred. Sterling didn't just want Ethan to clean. He wanted him broken. He wanted Evelyn to tell Ethan he failed. It wasn't merely a test of stamina. It was a power play designed to shatter the dignity of the non-wealthy. She looked at her reflection. The strain was hidden beneath a veneer of foundation, but her eyes held a new, dangerous resolve. The path of disproportionate self-sacrifice was proving ineffective. It only encouraged Sterling's cruelty. Evelyn remembered a casual conversation she'd had with one of Sterling's minor business rivals, a man named Henderson, a few weeks prior. Henderson had made an offhand comment about Sterling's obsession with image and secrecy regarding his early, less savory business dealings. If Sterling was conducting a character test, perhaps it was time for Evelyn to conduct one of her own. She pulled out her phone, the cold glass screen reflecting the ballroom lights, and began to scroll through her contacts. 1 hour and 35 minutes remaining before the final deadline. This was not about saving the engagement anymore. It was about saving her son's soul. Evelyn found Henderson discreetly nursing a scotch by the terrace door. She approached him with the calculated grace of a predator. The low, resonant thrum of the cello from the string quartet provided a deceptive cover for their conversation. "Mr. Henderson, a word about a delicate matter," Evelyn murmured, keeping her voice low and direct. She skipped the social niceties. There was no time. "I need some information about the early days of Sterling International, specifically about the acquisition of that sanitation firm, Pure Stream, 20 years ago." Henderson's eyes, already slightly glazed from the expensive liquor, snapped into focus. He took a long sip, considering her. "Why the sudden interest in Wallace's ancient garbage deals, Evelyn? Pure Stream was a messy acquisition. Lots of dirty laundry, literally and figuratively. Wallace is putting my son through an unnecessary and humiliating test regarding his worth. I believe the only currency Sterling understands is shame. And I believe the Pure Stream deal might contain a significant source of his." Henderson smiled, a slow, appreciative curve of the lips. "Ah, the mother bear awakens. I like it." He leaned closer, the stale, smoky scent of his cigar clinging to his jacket. "The official story is that Sterling bought Pure Stream to expand his infrastructure holdings. The truth? Pure Stream was the only asset Sterling had during a catastrophic liquidity crisis. He didn't buy it. He sold off his primary residence to acquire it and save his reputation. More importantly, the company was heavily cited for illegal waste dumping in the river tributary near Old Town. Sterling covered it up. He knows the location. He paid off the inspectors. This was it. Obstacle 2. The dilemma. Evelyn now held the metaphorical weapon. The moral choice was stark. Use this professional secret to save Ethan's dignity and future, or maintain her ethical high ground and watch her son be crushed by Sterling's pride. Do you have anything concrete, names, dates, evidence that Sterling personally authorized the cover-up? Evelyn's fingers tightened around the phone in her pocket, the eye-smooth, cold surface grounding her. "I have the name of the man he paid off, a former EPA inspector named Dale Finch, and I have the address of a storage locker where Finch supposedly keeps insurance files," Henderson drawled. "But be warned, Evelyn. If you use this, you are declaring war on Wallace Sterling. There is no retreat. You will not only ruin the engagement, but you will expose yourself to his vengeance. Are you willing to make that disproportionate self-sacrifice? This is the critical junction. Evelyn has been sacrificing her needs. Now she must sacrifice her safety and her reputation for Ethan. Would you pull the pin on that grenade of truth, knowing the explosion will cost you everything?" Evelyn looked out at the glittering party, at the people laughing around Sterling, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the service corridors and behind closed doors. 1 hour and 20 minutes left. She looked Henderson dead in the eye. Tell me everything about Dale Finch. I need to move now. Reversion. 1. The reader believed Evelyn's struggle was purely defensive, to protect Ethan's engagement. The truth is, the engagement is already doomed by Sterling's pride. Her mission has shifted from protection to aggressive counterattack, forcing her to abandon her fatal flaw of self-sacrifice and weaponize her opponent's weakness. Henderson relayed the essential details in hurried whispers, punctuated by the high, cheerful tinkles of glasses being refilled by the passing waitstaff. Finch's contact information, his known haunts, and the key detail. Sterling had scheduled a meeting with Finch next week to renegotiate the silence, a critical error that showed Sterling felt vulnerable about the issue. Evelyn's mind was racing, calculating risk versus reward. She couldn't track down Finch in the 1 hour and 10 minutes remaining, but she could certainly plant the seed of panic in Sterling's mind. She needed to accelerate Sterling's planned meeting to make him believe his secret was already leaking. She excused herself from Henderson, her posture straightening, the initial weariness replaced by a chilling clarity. She walked directly toward the service elevator, not caring about the damp, stained velvet of her gown anymore. She bypassed Ethan, knowing he was minutes away from his final act of self-abasement. She had to ensure his sacrifice wasn't in vain, not by completing the task, but by dismantling the man who said it. She marched through the bustling kitchen, a chaotic, loud environment filled with the sizzling smell of roasting herbs and butter, and located the head caterer, a stressed woman named Maria. "Maria, a small favor," Evelyn said, her voice smooth and compelling. "Mr. Sterling is expecting a crucial package that must be delivered to him immediately. It's marked Finch Urgent. It involves the setup for his meeting next week." Maria, drowning in the chaos of a 100-person dinner service, barely glanced up. "A package? I haven't seen anything come through receiving, madam." The hot, slick surface now of the metal counter they leaned against radiated heat into the crowded space. "It will be arriving shortly by courier. I just need you to confirm that when it arrives, you will personally ensure it reaches Mr. Sterling without delay. It is related to the PureStream project." Evelyn paused, applying subtle, calculated pressure. The use of the project name, a subject Maria likely wouldn't recognize but would associate with high-level corporate drama, was enough. The true art of manipulation is getting someone else to believe they are performing their duty, not fulfilling your demand. Do you think Evelyn's ability to pivot from self-sacrifice to strategic command is sustainable? Or is she just delaying the inevitable breakdown? Maria nodded quickly, eager to dispense with the demanding guest. "Yes, madam. Finch, PureStream. I understand. Anything urgent for Mr. Sterling goes straight to his private study." Evelyn gave a tight, satisfied nod. The trap was set. Now she needed to ensure the package arrived via an unassailable source. She moved swiftly back toward the front of the house, dialing a contact she rarely used, a high-end, discreet messenger service known for its speed and silence. "I need an immediate delivery to the Sterling residence," she instructed, her voice crisp. "The item is a sealed manila envelope. The recipient is Wallace Sterling. The sender must be listed clearly as Dale Finch, EPA Retribution Fund. It must arrive in precisely 45 minutes. She paid the exorbitant fee without flinching. The time remaining was 55 minutes. She had to get back to the ballroom and watch Sterling's reaction when the bomb landed. Evelyn returned to the main hall with only 40 minutes remaining until the deadline. She scanned the room, locating Sterling near the fireplace again, holding court with 2 senators. She positioned herself at a safe distance, close enough to observe his reaction, far enough not to appear involved. The minutes dragged, each second stretching the tension taut. She pictured Ethan downstairs, likely finishing the last toilet, cleaning the last streak, exhausting himself to prove a point to a man who didn't care. That image hardened her resolve. She was no longer performing a disproportionate self-sacrifice. She was exacting justice for the sacrifice Sterling had forced upon her son. Precisely 35 minutes after her call, just 10 minutes before the delivery was due, Sterling's daughter Clara approached Evelyn, her expression pinched with worry. "Evelyn, where is Ethan? Father is furious. The guests are here. He keeps asking if the test is complete. He wants to know if he needs to announce the cancellation of the engagement," Clara whispered, her silk dress rustling with the movement, a soft, high-pitched shh sound that was almost hysterical. Evelyn placed a steadying hand on Clara's arm, feeling the cold, smooth silk beneath her palm. "Clara, Ethan is finishing. He is proving his dedication exactly as your father demanded. You need to trust him." Evelyn looked past Clara toward the front door, The messenger service was notoriously punctual. Imagine the internal conflict of the innocent party in this situation. Clara loves Ethan, but she is trapped between her fiancé and her terrifying father. Do you think loyalty to family or loyalty to love should win out in such a high-stakes scenario? At that moment, the grand oak doors opened and a figure in a black uniform, the discreet messenger, slipped in, holding a slim manila envelope. The messenger moved with practiced efficiency, avoiding the main clusters of guests, and handed the package directly to a passing waiter. The waiter, trained to handle high-value items, carried it immediately toward Sterling. Evelyn watched Sterling's face as the waiter approached, murmuring, "Excuse me, Mr. Sterling. Urgent delivery. From Dale Finch." Sterling's booming conversation cut off abruptly. The blood drained from his face with visible speed, leaving his cheeks mottled and gray. He snatched the envelope from the waiter's hand, his fingers crushing the paper. The background noise of the party, the laughter, the music, suddenly seemed muted to Evelyn. Sterling didn't even glance at the contents. The name on the package was The Crisis. He gave a harsh, short order to his assistant, who rushed to open a hidden door near the fireplace, revealing a private, soundproof study. Sterling excused himself with a curt wave, disappearing into the study, the door snapping shut behind him. The great man, the puppet master, had been forced off the stage. This was Obstacle 3, The Crisis. The deadline was now 30 minutes away, and Sterling was locked away dealing with his ghost. Evelyn's bold gamble had worked, but she still needed Ethan to finish and appear on time. She quickly pulled out her phone and sent a single, coded text message to Ethan. "Finish now. Shower. Be ready in 15 minutes. No excuses." Inside the small private study, Wallace Sterling ripped open the manila envelope. It was empty. The chilling realization of the deliberate, calculated threat hit him like a physical blow. The letterhead was a fabricated logo for the EPA Retribution Fund, a final, mocking detail. Someone knew about Finch. Someone knew about PureStream. And they were playing games with him, disrupting his most important social event. He felt the rapid, painful thud of his pulse in his temples. He slammed the envelope onto his solid oak desk, the deep, hollow sound echoing in the small room. The timing was too precise, the message too pointed. It was a direct, aggressive challenge to his authority, and the only person he could think of who had enough recent motive, and the sheer audacity, was Evelyn Mercer. He recalled her earlier too-calm conversation about proportionality and her pointed question about PureStream. Sterling grabbed his phone, his thumb hovering over Evelyn's contact, when the sound of the string quartet outside suddenly swelled, signaling a transition in the program. He had less than 25 minutes before the deadline, and he needed to reappear. If he missed the transition, he would look weak, distracted. But if he didn't deal with Evelyn, she would continue to dismantle him piece by piece. He decided on the only move he had left. He would force the issue. He would terminate the engagement immediately, using Ethan's performance as the pretext, and then deal with Evelyn's blackmail threat in private. His obsession with control, the root cause of his cruelty, blinded him to the deeper danger. Self-preservation often forces us to make rash decisions under pressure. Sterling is reacting defensively, choosing destruction over negotiation. Have you ever seen a situation where someone's need for control ultimately led to their downfall? Meanwhile, Evelyn waited near the main entrance. 20 minutes left. Her gown felt heavy and cold, the damp patches starting to stiffen. She maintained a facade of social engagement, nodding politely at acquaintances, but her eyes kept darting toward the hidden study door. Suddenly, the door to the study burst open. Sterling emerged, his face a mask of furious composure. He marched directly toward Evelyn, bypassing Clara, who was still anxiously waiting. The air around him crackled with contained rage, chilling the warmth of the room. "Evelyn, my private bathroom inspection confirms my worst fears," Sterling announced, his voice carrying just enough to silence the immediate vicinity. "The last bathroom had one minor streak on the chrome, an imperfection. Your son has failed the test of character and attention to detail. The engagement is officially terminated, effective immediately. Get him out of my house." Evelyn didn't react with the expected hysteria. She took a slow, deliberate step back, her spine rigid. This was the moment she had prepared for. Sterling's preemptive strike, triggered by the Finch threat, was his final attempt to impose the shame on her and Ethan. This was the result of her fatal flaw, the self-sacrifice, being misinterpreted as weakness, resulting in the maximum crisis. "I see," Evelyn said, her voice frighteningly calm. "So, you are using a single streak on a faucet as the pretext to punish Ethan for something I brought to your attention earlier this evening, Wallace." Something regarding PureStream. Her use of the code word was precise, hitting him at his most vulnerable point, threatening to expose him to the assembled corporate power structure. The mention of PureStream in front of the senators and high society guests caused a momentary, palpable drop in the room's atmosphere. Sterling's face twisted, a flash of pure, primal fear replacing his manufactured fury. "How dare you bring up ancient business history in my home? You are blackmailing me, Evelyn," Sterling spat, his voice strained, though still carefully modulated to sound like righteous indignation rather than panic. "I am not blackmailing you, Wallace. I am merely pointing out the hypocrisy," Evelyn countered, stepping closer, her gaze locked onto his. "You demand absolute moral integrity and cleanliness from my son, forcing him to scrub bathrooms in your service corridor for 3 hours, all to demonstrate worth. Yet 20 years ago, you personally authorized the illegal dumping of hazardous waste through PureStream to save your own reputation." The silence that followed was deafening, interrupted only by the frantic, escalating sound of the violin section of the string quartet attempting to cover the rupture. The sharp, metallic scent of desperation seemed to cling to Sterling's suit. Clara, horrified, stood rooted to the spot. The senators leaned in, their expressions a mixture of shock and opportunistic interest. "You have no proof!" Sterling roared, dropping all pretense of decorum. "Perhaps not yet, but I have the name of the man you paid off, Dale Finch, and I know you're terrified he's talking. That empty envelope was a warning, Wallace. It bought me time," Evelyn stated, her voice steady and ringing with a new, uncompromising strength. Her lifelong habit of disproportionate self-sacrifice was burned away by the need to protect her child. The moment of truth arrives when we stop protecting the image and start protecting the substance. Evelyn has shed her flaw. She is fighting not for acceptance, but for justice. If you had to choose between your reputation and your family, which would you sacrifice? Just as Sterling opened his mouth to deliver a final, crushing dismissal, the service elevator doors dinged softly and opened. Ethan emerged. He was immaculate. His tailored suit was perfect. His hair was still slightly damp, smelling faintly of high-end citrus soap, and his face was drawn but calm. He looked straight past Sterling and straight at Evelyn, a silent confirmation of his success. He had finished the task with 15 minutes to spare, meeting the numerical deadline. He walked past the stunned guests, ignoring the mounting tension until he reached Clara. He didn't offer her an apology or an explanation. He simply looked at the woman he loved and then turned to Wallace Sterling, standing beside his mother. "Mr. Sterling," Ethan said, his voice firm, echoing the newly found strength in his mother's command. "The bathrooms are clean. Every streak is gone. I passed your test of competence just as I passed every other hurdle you placed in front of me. Now, my mother just delivered the final test, the test of character. I have decided that I will not enter a family that demands submission over integrity. The engagement is off." Wallace Sterling's mouth worked soundlessly, robbed of his ability to execute the final power play. Ethan had beaten him to the punch, not by cleaning well, but by walking away from the prize Sterling held hostage. This wasn't merely a rejection. It was public humiliation delivered by the very man Sterling had tried to break. Clara gasped, reaching out a trembling hand. "Ethan, wait! Don't do this over my father!" Ethan shook his head slowly, his eyes reflecting the deep, sorrowful certainty of his decision. "Clara, I love you, but I can't build a life based on shame. I am done proving I am worthy of a man who builds his life on illegal waste and demands my degradation. I won't let him break me, or my mother anymore." Evelyn watched her son, a wave of profound relief and fierce pride washing over her. Her risky maneuver had achieved the ultimate goal, not the engagement, but the preservation of Ethan's self-respect. Sterling finally found his voice, a low, guttural threat. "If you walk out now, Evelyn, you lose every social connection you have tried to cultivate. And I will crush your son's company. I promise you, I will ruin you both." "You can certainly try, Wallace," Evelyn said, adjusting the now stained velvet of her gown, a deliberate act of defiance. The rough, damp texture of the material was a scar she would wear proudly. "But my son just proved he can handle any mess you throw at him, even the ones you tried to cover up 20 years ago." She took Ethan's arm. Clara started to cry silently, her hand covering her mouth, the soft, muffled sound lost beneath the confused chatter of the crowd. This was their victory, achieved at the expense of genuine love. The path to redemption is rarely painless. Ethan's dignity is restored, but his heart is shattered. Is there ever a victory over injustice that doesn't leave lasting collateral damage? They walked toward the massive front doors. Sterling, pale with fury, was pulled aside by one of the senators, who was already peppering him with questions about Finch and the PureStream acquisition. The threat of professional exposure was immediate and overwhelming, entirely eclipsing the domestic drama. As Evelyn and Ethan reached the door, another figure stepped forward. Sterling's personal assistant, Ms. Davies. Her face was impassive, but she held a small black notebook in her hand, the cover bearing the faint scratches and nicks of heavy use. "Mrs. Mercer," Ms. Davies whispered, meeting Evelyn's gaze directly. "Mr. Sterling is deeply concerned about his former business contacts resurfacing. I believe he may have misplaced certain sensitive files regarding the PureStream acquisition. Files pertaining to the original EPA report. Reversion 2. Evelyn believed her bluff with the empty envelope was the extent of her leverage. The stunning reversal was that she had an unexpected ally, Ms. Davies, who was offering the actual proof she needed. "I am unable to locate them, Mrs. Mercer," Ms. Davies continued, her voice devoid of emotion. "Perhaps you could check your handbag. I would hate for Mr. Sterling to lose them." As she spoke, she subtly slipped the small black notebook into Evelyn's waiting hand, the worn leather soft and unexpected. The clack of the closing front door sealed their exit, leaving the chaos behind them. The cool night air hit Evelyn's face, carrying the distant, clean smell of pine and freshly cut grass right from the Sterling estate's meticulously maintained gardens. She and Ethan walked quickly down the cobblestone drive, away from the glittering, poisonous light of the mansion. Ethan's composure finally fractured. He stopped under the soft glow of a street lamp, his shoulders shaking as he lowered his head. "I had to do it, Mom. I couldn't marry into that kind of tyranny." "You did the right thing, my brave boy," Evelyn whispered, pulling him into a fierce embrace. She felt the heavy, muscular warmth of his body beneath the perfect suit and pressed the small, black notebook deeper into her purse. The physical evidence was the final triumph, confirmation that her courage had been rewarded. Evelyn had won. She had exposed Sterling's corruption, saved Ethan from a life of emotional subjugation, and forced her way out of a toxic social dependency. She had shed the fatal flaw of disproportionate self-sacrifice, realizing that protecting her son sometimes meant starting a war, not avoiding one. But the victory was heavy. As they reached her small rented car, Ethan stared back at the mansion, the light catching the sheen of tears on his cheeks. "I lost her, Mom. I really lost Clara." The loss was palpable, a permanent, searing ache. Evelyn's victory came with the cost of Ethan's broken heart and the guaranteed, ongoing enmity of Wallace Sterling. The moment she had used the word PureStream, she had not only ended the engagement but ensured that her and Ethan's lives would be under constant professional siege from the powerful man they had humiliated. Her gown, ruined by bleach and damp concrete, was a physical reminder of the degradation she had accepted and then rejected, leaving a permanent stain on her short-lived attempt at high society acceptance. We always think justice will feel like elation, but often it tastes like ash and regret. How do we reconcile the necessity of a fight with the cost of the win? That's a question that follows us long after the battlefield is clear. Evelyn started the engine, the familiar, comforting low rumble of her older car offering a sense of reality. She drove away from the Sterling estate, not toward the comfort of her home, but toward the urgent, immediate need to secure the information in the black notebook. The fight was not over. It had merely shifted from a domestic drama to a long, grinding war of attrition. But as she gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white, she knew one thing for certain. She would never scrub a bathroom or bite her tongue to earn acceptance ever again. The pain of the loss was real, but the restoration of their shared dignity was absolute.